Well, good afternoon. I know what you're thinking. You are just shocked. This man cannot have grandkids. He's so young, so vital. Oh, your grandparents will appreciate this. Once you have grandkids, oh my goodness. Jesus, of course, would be number one. Your wife, if you're married, would be number two. But then the grandkids. My own 4 kids, who cares? It's all about the grandkids. I think we understand this. Anyway. But I'm not here to talk about my grandkids. I could spend time, Izzy, and now little Jackie. Oh, my goodness. But I haven't even seen Jackie yet. She's in North Carolina. Leanne married a Coast Guard guy, and he dragged her off to North Carolina. Hate that kid. Anyway, I'm here to talk about marriage, and specifically your marriages, and even those, of course, that you're serving with. Because if you're in ministry, God's going to bring couples to you. You know how he does that, and he wants to save marriages. In 30 years, I've never recommended divorce, and I never will. That's not my business. God wants every marriage to be saved and restored. My research over the past 3 decades as a clinical psychologist in Tampa, Florida, and as a presenter of marriage seminars across the country shows that 85% of all husbands have no clue when it comes to achieving intimacy with their wives. I call these husbands intimacy avoiders. I hold in my hand a quiz that will reveal if you're married to an intimacy avoider. Yes, I'm not kidding. It's my quiz, of course, but it's true. Now, 3 caveats before I read this quiz with you. Number 1, these doors are locked, so you can't leave. Number 2, in most marriages, the husband is the intimacy avoider. I think I'm making that clear. But in 15% of the time, if you do the math, the wife is the intimacy avoider, so the roles can easily be reversed. But because there are so many more husbands that are intimacy avoiders by nature and by training, I'm going to, of course, refer to the husband as the intimacy avoider for ease of communication in this segment. Plus, men don't buy books, so who cares about you? No, just kidding. Sorry, guys. I'm helping you guys, too. Thirdly, as I go over this quiz, I want you to be honest. You know what? Change begins with honesty. If you're honest right now as I go over this quiz with me, God, yourself, and your spouse, then your marriage can begin to change right now, right here today. So are you ready, yes or no, for my intimacy avoider quiz, the married but lonely quiz? Yes or no? Yes. All right. I'm not going to ask for the no part, of course, but no, it's a series of true-false statements. After each statement, of course, in your own mind, you're going to say true or false concerning your spouse. Don't say it out loud. It'll be the end of your seminar or the conference. Here we go. He is content with low levels of intimacy in the marriage. True or false? He does not talk in a personal heart-to-heart way with you. True or false? He holds his emotions and deep thoughts inside. His idea of quality time is having you sit next to him while he watches TV. He seems to love his TV, phone, and job more than he loves you. He believes the only purpose of romance was to get you to marry him. After the wedding, he dropped it. The only time he is passionate is during sex. He has the listening skills of a tree stump. You see why we had to lock the doors. He's into conservation of words. He sees no point in using 25 words when 1 or 2 will do. You have come to realize that 99% of his entire conversational repertoire with you consists of these 20 statements. I think I'll recognize these ladies. Fine, okay, pretty good, sure, I don't know, nothing's wrong, I don't want to talk about it. I said I was sorry, get over it. You're overreacting. You shouldn't feel that way. I forgot. I never said that. It's that time of the month, isn't it? One of my old favorites. How about some sex, baby? What's on television? Do we have to visit your parents? Where are my socks? What's for dinner? And what did you say? I think I may be striking close to home. He would rather face a firing squad than talk through a conflict with you. He does love you, but cannot express love in ways that make you feel loved. He is happy as long as you give him sex, food, clean clothes, and the remote control. He thinks you have a great marriage. He has no idea why you're upset and unhappy, at least some of the time. Does any of this sound familiar? I'll bet it does. If you answered yes or true to at least 10 of these statements, you're married to an intimacy avoider. Now that's the bad news. The good news is we can fix it. And that's what we're going to do today. Let me give you a brief profile of the intimacy avoider husband. He's not a bad guy. In fact, he's a really, really good guy. All right? He is not into serious sin. He is not a womanizer. He's not an alcoholic. He's not a drug addict. He doesn't hit you. He's not a serial killer. Isn't that nice to know? Now, there have been a few exceptions in 30 years, but not many, I'm telling you. All those news stories, the guy that kills somebody, they was the nicest guy in the world. But the fact is, your husband is not a serial killer. And he does love you. He really does love you. The problem is, he doesn't know how to love you. He doesn't know how to meet your needs. He doesn't know how to open up and share personally with you. Why? Because no one ever taught him how growing up. In fact, growing up, most men are taught to avoid intimacy. Now, the truth is, as a man, we are predisposed to avoid intimacy. But add to that, his dad, other males and culture teach him to avoid it. Also, your husband is very happy in your marriage. He really is. If you asked him right now, honey, how do you think our marriage is going? He would answer without hesitation, great. And he means that. He thinks you and he are close. And since he's happy, he figures you must be happy. You're sitting there thinking, Dave, this quiz describes my marriage. I am married but lonely. He's sitting there thinking, I guarantee you, man, I feel bad for the poor suckers in those marriages. I'm going to have to pray for them. We are just great. Here's a phrase that describes the majority of marriages and the majority of men in those marriages. He just doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it. Women, how many times have you thought to yourself, or actually said out loud, he just doesn't get it? Well, you're right, he doesn't get it. All right? I didn't get it, honestly, the first 10 years of my marriage. I was the intimacy avoider. You can tell I'm a pretty expressive person, outgoing, but I didn't have a clue when it came to intimacy. Now, I had a great Christian home growing up. Wonderful mom and dad. If you met Bill and Kathy Clarke, my folks, you'd love them. Everybody does. They served with Campus Crusade for Christ. My dad was a pastor. I mean, man, how does it get any better than that? Didn't seem to help me in the area of intimacy. Early in my marriage, I earned a PhD in clinical psychology. You think that would help in the area of intimacy, right? Thousands were spent on that degree. Didn't help me in my marriage with Sandy. Like most couples, when we got married, Sandy and I were on completely different levels when it came to intimacy. Sandy, coming in, 21 years old, had a PhD in creating intimacy. Most women do. She knew how to create intimacy and depth emotionally and spiritually. She'd been doing it her whole life. I had spent my whole life avoiding it to that point, 22 years old. I came into marriage with a PhD in avoiding intimacy. I had no idea how to create it, but I was a master at avoiding it, and that cost us in our marriage. Sandy tried over and over to get me to open up those first 10 years and share personally. She wanted to hear my personal thoughts. She wanted to hear my personal emotions. She wanted me to have deeper conversations with her. I said, no, not out loud, but I avoided her, thought everything was fine, living in total denial. I'm giving marriage seminars across the United States, and my own home was suffering, but I thought she was just fine. I got her pregnant 4 times. I thought 4 kids would distract the woman. It did buy me a couple of extra years, I'm just telling you. Eventually and finally, I realized, oh my goodness, Sandy is unhappy in this marriage. She is lonely. Now, the reason I figured that out is because Sandy, Roxanne Clarke, sat down and told me that to my face. She figured 10 years was long enough. I said, honey, she got my attention. More on that in a few minutes. You got to get a man's attention, all right? I realized, whoa, she wanted closeness with me. That's why she married me. I thought it was my incredible physique. Turned out that wasn't true. Dave, I married you to be close to you. That's not happening. I said, you wanted 4 kids, now you got them. It didn't work. She wanted it with me, and you have to, it's even more of a challenge when you have 4 kids, even 1 child, to create that as a couple. Well, it wasn't happening. It started to happen when we started to work on it. Together, with God's truth in the Bible and God's help, because you can't do it without His help, we fixed that intimacy problem. I had to own my part in it. Sandy had to own that she had not been clear with me. Together, we learned how to connect emotionally, physically, and spiritually. You can fix it too. Briefly, here's how. There's one thing I want you not to do, and there are 2 things I want you to do, all right, as a couple. The one thing I want you not to do is to follow the most popular Christian approach to marital problems. And that's this, and it's directed to the wives almost always. In fact, this is the most popular approach even to improve a marriage, even if you don't have real problems. And here's the message. Wives, keep on loving him and meeting his needs. Don't mention your own needs. And one day he'll change and eventually meet your deepest needs. Really? You know what I say to that? Baloney. That approach has never worked, and it's never going to work. So many godly, well-meaning people that I have known over 30 years, and I still come across them, are pushing this point of view. If only it would work. I've got thousands and thousands of wives who I've talked with at seminars who say it doesn't work. So I know it doesn't work. It didn't work for Sandy and I. Pastors, church staff, Christian counselors, experts on the radio. It's a complete misunderstanding of male nature. Ladies, if you keep on meeting his needs and don't mention your needs and make them an issue, he'll think everything's just fine. That's what a man is like. He thinks you're happy. He thinks everybody's happy, and he has no reason to change. Plus, he has no idea what your needs are anyway. No clue. You probably think he does know what your needs are, and he's just choosing not to meet them. Women think it isn't obvious what my needs are. He's living with me. No, he doesn't have the first clue. I can't tell you how many couples I've seen in my office in Tampa, therapy office, whether it's a marriage intensive from out of town or local couples that I see, where I'm sitting with the couple, the man and the wife, and I say to the wife, he doesn't know what your needs are. And she'll say to me, he does so know what my needs are. What are you talking about? We've been married for 20 years, 15 years, 8 years. I'll say, ask him. She'll say, I will. She's eager to prove me wrong. And she turns, and she's hoping I'm wrong. She'll say, Bob. I say, it's always Bob with me. Bob, what are my needs? And Bob's like, Bob doesn't know. I said, I told you so. Who's the psychologist in this room? He doesn't know. And then I say, I've been a Christian practically my whole life, came to Christ at 5 years old. I grew up in a Christian home, and I do love my wife, and I didn't know until 10 years into my marriage what her needs are. So no, he doesn't know. Plus, and here's some bad news, if you follow this just love him approach, and well-meaning though it may be, without making your needs clear, and your desires and what you need out of the marriage, well then you're actually violating Scripture because you're not telling him the truth. And the truth is, I'm not happy in this marriage. I'm lonely. My needs aren't being met. I'm not close to you. Now, that's hard. That's hard truth. But some of you, maybe many of you, need to say that to your spouse if that's the truth. You don't say those things, you know what Satan's going to do, and he's after everybody in this room. If you have the nerve to serve God in any capacity, let alone in ministry, he hates your living guts. And your marriage is on his bulletin board in hell, and he's going to come after you. So if one partner is hurting and not feeling intimate, and the other person doesn't know it, he's going to get you sooner or later. Don't let that happen. Plus, God wants you to have a vibrant marriage, and he wants it to bless your family, your circle of influence, those you serve with. God is really big in the Bible on telling the truth. We know that. God says, speak the truth in love, Ephesians 4:15. I could give you right now 100 more verses, one right after the other, about how important it is to speak the truth by instruction in the Bible as well as by example. We know that's true. But if you've got that kind of truth and you're not sharing it, that's a violation. Also, God says in Ephesians 5:25, and every time I hear that verse, it just really convicts me because I'm the husband. It's to husbands. God says through the Apostle Paul, his great servant, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That verse means a lot of things. Highest possible, deepest possible standard of love. Your needs as a wife, God is saying in part in this verse, are critically important, and it's your husband's number one human job to meet them. Okay, that's what I want you not to do. Don't follow that approach. Here's what I want you to do. 2 simple steps will get you going in the right direction. And the first step is have the conversation. Have the conversation. Ladies, today, find a quiet place with your husband, private, quiet place. You take his hands in yours. You look him in his eyes, and you tell him the truth. Could be 5 years in, 4 years in, 14 years in, 35 years in, whatever it is. You tell him the truth. And that could be, I'm not happy in our marriage. I'm lonely. My needs aren't being met. I don't feel close to you. It may blow him away. You have to be direct and you have to be honest. A man, to get it, needs a shovel to the head. All right? Conversationally speaking. I'm not selling shovels, I'm just selling books. But you know what? It might be helpful. The book's pretty heavy though. No, but you're honest. And of course, you do it in a loving way. You love this man like nobody else. I know that's true. But things aren't working and he doesn't know it. Get his attention. You might also admit in this conversation what is also probably true, and that is, you know what, honey, until now, I haven't been completely honest about my unhappiness and my unmet needs. That's over now, I'm talking to you. And then you ask him at the end of this conversation, would you join me in a process to improve our marriage, to become intimate like we've never been? A good man's gonna say yes. A dirtball's gonna say no. If you're married to a dirtball, I'm sorry, all right? I've got a whole different tough of approach for you to follow, but you're not married to a dirtball. Ron assures me every man that comes to the D6 is a great guy. I'm pretty confident that you've got a good guy. He'll say yes, and you begin the process working together to change this marriage. The second thing I want you to do is to write him your letter of needs. Write him your letter of needs. Now, he's got to have this letter because he has no idea what your needs are. And I think I made that pretty clear. I hope I have. He doesn't know. When you have written him this letter, and it's going to be a letter, it could be written in longhand, as long as you can read your own handwriting, or it could be typed. When you've written this letter and you've read it to him in a private place and you've handed it over to him, he will never again have any excuse for not knowing what your needs are. Now, this will be the first time he really knows, but this becomes now a roadmap to your heart. Now he knows what your needs are. The ladies that I've had do this in my office in Tampa, and even at seminars, sometimes I'll see people and it'll be 8 pages long, 5 pages. The guy's like, what did you write, War and Peace? Fine, 10, 15 pages? I say write as much as you can because he's gonna use this for the next 3 to 6 months and maybe longer as he learns how to meet your needs because he doesn't know what those are. It's gonna be an intensely personal letter and it's gonna be painstakingly specific. You are going to lead him to water and you're going to make him drink, all right? Now, men need instructions, right? You're going to give him instructions to your heart. That's what this basically amounts to. You're going to tell him exactly what your needs are, your core important needs, and you're going to tell him exactly how to meet those needs. Don't deal in generalities in this letter. I've had some ladies have to write it again. You will state the need, and then you'll state, here's how you can meet that need. Give him examples, paint him a picture. Men don't do good with subtlety. Let him know, here's what that would look like. It's powerful. You want a godly man? Oh, I know you do. That's at the top of every Christian wife's list. I want a godly man. What does that look like for you? This is about meeting your needs. He could be a godly man, but if it's not meeting your needs, it's not working, so tell him. It's about his personal devotionals. It's about praying with you. It's about the spiritual bond you want, talking about spiritual things conversationally, serving together possibly. Make it clear what you're looking for. You want a servant leader, don't you, as the Bible talks about? You know you do. Well, then tell him exactly what that looks like. Men struggle with leadership. I can't lead Sandy unless I'm doing it the way that she feels is right and it's going to work for her, so she had to tell me that. You want a biblical lover, a biblical romancer? I know you do. Tell him what that looks like. You want a man who's affectionate? The whole area of non-sexual touching? No man here even knows what that means. I won't go into it, but there's a category. Anyway, the whole area of non-sexual touching and cuddling, for a man, it's like getting the bronze medal in the Olympics. You're there on the platform, somebody else's flag is going up. This is not happening. Anyway, we'll save the rest of that for next year. So, affection. What does affection look like? It means I want to kiss you in the morning and at night, and I want to have makeout sessions, and we don't end up in the bedroom. The guy's like, what would be the point of the touching then? Okay, fine. But be honest, he needs to know that. You can tell him, and this is just true, if we have makeout sessions like that, this is turning into a makeout talk. This is cool. Anyway, but if you have those kind of sessions, honey, the times that we are in the bedroom, I will be so much more open and so much more willing to give myself to you. That will get the man. It's true anyway. Get his attention. The whole area of finances has to be handled. You know how many Christian marriages have been shipwrecked because of finances? Now, you make plenty of money at your jobs in ministry. I know that. Anyway, look, you want to be good stewards. But we all have different styles of spending. We got the spender, we got the saver. We have to talk about that in your letter. Here's what I'd like to see in the area of finances. Again, he's a good guy. He'll start working to make sure that you're happy in that area. That's important. I want to ask for a show of hands. In-law problems? Is there a problem with your family? Spell out what you'd like to see there. He'll do it for you out of love. Parenting. Tremendous parenting issues can be in many Christian homes because we come into marriage with two different parenting styles. And sometimes you got a kid that just drives you nuts. They came out that way. And you don't know what to do. Well, talk to him. What kind of dad would you like him to be? You're laying it out. It's a roadmap to your heart. Now, because he's the leader in your relationship, Ephesians 5:22-24 makes that clear. He will go first, all right? And so you'll lay out the plan, you've got the letter. He'll spend the first 3 to 6 months going first and working to meet your needs with practice, talking, discussion. And he'll get better at this. It'll start to happen. You'll start to feel intimate. You'll have deeper conversations. It'll start to work spiritually. The spiritual bond is so powerful. At that point, what's going to happen is he'll start realizing he has deeper needs that he never realized he had. And now at that point, since he's done the job as the leader, he can now share with you those deeper needs and you can meet those needs. And things really start to take off. Now, there are other things you have to do, that's true, but these 2 steps will get you started in the right direction, my friends. From lonely in your marriage, which may be where you are now, busy in ministry but lonely at home, to intimate in marriage. It's what God has always wanted for you, and it's what you want, and it's what you need.